and the chair of the African Union, my brother, Honorable Amkele Mene, the Secretary General of AFCFTA, the outgoing chair of the AFCFTA summit, and the former president of Benin, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed my pleasure to be here today for this very important gathering that brings together for the first time the policymakers in the form of ministers, in the form of governments, and our private sector. For so many years, as we have been going through this journey for AFCFTA, it has been a conversation of governments talking to fellow governments. But today, here in Nairobi, Kenya, and for the first time, we have on one side the private sector, and on the other hand, we have the policymakers in the form of the Africa trade ministers. When we were in Addis Ababa for the Africa Union Summit in March this year, Secretary General Amkele Mene and myself had a discussion, and we asked ourselves, now we have come from this very rigorous phase when we have been going through the ratification and all the preliminary processes. What is the way forward? Where do we go from here? It is at that time that Honorable Amkele requested Kenya to host the first ever retreat for the Africa trade ministers to chart the way forward and develop an implementation framework matrix for taking AFCFTA forward. And that is how we are really believing in Kenya, for trusting in Kenya, for believing that Kenya has got an important role to play in charting this way forward. And I want to assure you, Secretary General, that we are equal to the task. As we embark on the next 3 very interesting days in terms of the discussions that we're going to have, starting from today, with this dialogue between ministers and private sector, and for the next 2 days, that is tomorrow and Wednesday, when we break out for the Africa trade ministers to do a retreat and focus now on the implementation milestones, and for the private sector to continue talking to fellow private sector and see us answer these questions. When we discuss Africa integration, it is for whose benefit? Who are the stakeholders? The government cannot be stakeholders. Governments do not do business. Governments exist and policymakers exist to create an environment for the private sector to take advantage. And so therefore, this morning, we are asking the private sector to step forward, because it is really in your name that we do all these agreements. It is really for your own benefit that we go through all these rigorous procedures, exchanging tariff offers, looking at all the other clauses that we are looking at, so that we can be able to create an environment that is conducive for you. As we engage, there are several things that we also have to take into consideration. One, we cannot have this AFCFTA only existing in boardrooms. We want to go out there. And that is why we are saying the phase of the boardroom is over. Now it's a phase for the businesses to work together. 2 is on the need for specialization and for us to respect our diversity, to work together to exploit the good areas, the strengths that we have, and so that we can be able to leverage on the core competencies that exist in different areas. We have cotton in the West. We have got a very vibrant financial services industry here in Kenya and in the region. How can we be able to take advantage of where our respective countries are good in this area and other countries that move in? Those are the kind of discussions we are going to have. Of course, the big question still lingers in terms of the tariff offers, and I would want to see, we had a discussion last week in Doha with Secretary General Amkele Mene, and we have agreed that going forward, the ministers of trade will work together with the ministers of finance in the respective countries, so that as we finish the different levels of tariff negotiations, then our finance ministers and our custom authorities can be able to take the next steps and actually publish the tariff books so that they can start to have effective meaning. Finally, as I conclude, let me also talk about the area of guided trade initiative. Kenya is part of the 8 nations that pioneered the guided trade initiative alongside Mauritius, alongside Rwanda, Ghana, Cameroon, Tunisia, and Egypt. And now, with other countries, especially the SACU countries, now also depositing their tariff offers, we have an opportunity to expand that league of the countries that are piloting what is actually the early harvest phase of AFCFTA. So I have seen my brother Ibrahim Patel from South Africa. We are very delighted with the SACU for depositing the tariff offers, and we look forward that now, for the first time, at most of the strong economies of Africa, starting with South Africa and Nigeria and Egypt and Ghana and all other countries that would want to join the pioneering countries that have been part of the guided trade initiative, to also join us so that we can be able to share with you lessons we have learned. You remember, Your Excellency, it was in the month of October that we flagged off our first export of tea from Kenya to Ghana under the guided trade mechanism. We have learned some lessons. For example, unfortunately, this consignment arrived in Ghana in February, all the way from October. So the willingness is there, but the challenges abound. Challenges of looking at our infrastructure connectivity, challenges of looking at why we need to move from Africa, from East Africa to Europe, if you want to travel to West Africa, because of the area of the problem of the air travel between our countries. So we have got lessons that we have learned over the last few months. And I believe that as we expand the guided trade initiative, we can now be able to come up with some solutions that can be able to take us to the next level. So I want to welcome all my fellow ministers and the private sector to Kenya and wish all of us very fruitful deliberations. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Moses Kuria, the Cabinet Secretary for Investment, Trade and Industry of Kenya, for the opening remarks. I would like to inform Your Excellencies that the next speaker on the program is the chairperson of the Council of Ministers, who...
Assembly of Head of State and Government, Your Excellency, champion of AFCFTA and former President of the Republic of Niger, dear colleague ministers, Secretary General of the AFCFTA, dear participants, all protocol observed. First of all, let me join with you all in thanking God for His grace and mercy who allow us to be here today. May His name be praised forever. Let me also appreciate the warm welcome and the hospitality conveyed to us since landing in this beautiful town of Nairobi. Your presence of you, each of one of you here, is a proof of the commitment that you want to make another milestone of the Africa we want. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the Africa we want, as outlined in the Agenda 2062, is a vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful continent. As also the theme of the year of the AU is accelerating the implementation of the Africa Trade Free Trade Area. Together, we need to change our mindset and change challenges we face into opportunities. The African Continental Free Trade Area is one of the solutions of some socio-economic challenges that we faced. To do so, we must focus on inclusive and sustainable programs which add value of our economies and which also improving the livelihood of our population. On that line, no one can ignore the sector, especially as the key motor for industrialization and trading. The reason why we are here today, in order to offer a platform of discussion on how to own and drive Africa continental free trade area by improving and keeping strong and active the private sector. I hope by the end of the day, we'll come up with a roadmap in order to unlock trade and investment opportunity within Africa. I believe that it's a good opportunity for all of us, ever and now, to embark the private sector in the process of implementation of the African continental free trade area. Let's take this advantage and make intra-trade happening. I wish you a fruitful dialogue and deliberation. God bless you.
The Secretary General of the AFCFTA, His Excellency Wamkele Mene, to come forward and make his remarks.